Helen, when did you first realize you have the ability and the talent to shape words into tangible expressions that can inspire, educate, and entertain?
When I was quite young, I always had to write. Always had to write. I always had what my mum called my head in a book. So either reading or writing. And I grew up in a huge Greek, Cypriot-Welsh, Irish, Jamaican house with not many rooms, one bathroom, same thing. Lots of people everywhere, and I just wanted to get away. I was an only child, so always trying to hide in a corner, reading, writing.
Who would you say is your greatest writing influence in terms of your own writing style, and why?
I did a late A-level. I did it at the same time as our children because I didn't get that far at school. So I then studied Tennessee Williams, Shakespeare, Thomas Hardy, Jane Austen in depth. And those people always had an influence on my writing, especially Jane Austen, Thomas Hardy, those people. But most of all, of course, I have to say Daphne du Maurier. She's always been the one that I've looked to. I think Daphne du Maurier's work goes across all genres. She is not just, in fact, she didn't want to be known as a romantic novelist. And people who say Rebecca is a romantic novel, no, it's not. It's a study in jealousy. And if you've seen the film, you'll find that out, either the old version or the new one that's come about just recently. It's a study in jealousy because it takes up on what she felt at the time about finding some letters of her husband's and realising that, the person he was engaged to before was someone she now felt a bit jealous about. So she went from there, basically. But her work, it's been made into all sorts of films and dramas. Don't Look Now is from her work. The Birds, Alfred Hitchcock, both those were short stories and made into long films, so they stand the test of time as well. But Rebecca's my special interest, of course, and that led me on to finding out a bit more about Daphne du Maurier's time in Cyprus. A friend of mine, Anne Wilmore, runs a website, and it was that website that I went to when I first went down to Cornwall and realised I'd got an interest, because that's where Daphne du Maurier was based, in Foy. Before that, though, I'd seen something on the forum, and it was a young lady from Cyprus who'd said, "Did you realise that Rebecca was written in Cyprus?" And this was dated 1999, so that always stuck in my mind. And what with Anne Wilmore's influence, because I went to Cornwall, got some books and so on, it built and built. And then in 2009, my husband Doug and I went to Forest Park Hotel where she'd stayed, and realised by seeing a copy of the register that yes, she had stayed there in 1936. And it had been because she was in Alexandria with her husband, too hot there, came across to cool, shady Platris and stayed there. So my interest in it grew from there. But after that, the plot thickened, if you like to say, last year, because I found a piece of information to find that not only she'd been once to Platris, she came back in 1937. And it's not widely known.
I personally believe that every act of writing is an opportunity to change the world. Is there a poem or a written piece that has influenced your own outlook on life?
Daphne's poem, the one about being a writer and being very lonesome, is a good one to go by if you are a writer. She speaks about being on her own all day, and she used to write in the garden shed, so yes, it was a big deal for her. In fact, she was lucky she had a maid and servants and a nanny for her children. But I think that poem, plus the saying, I think it's John Lennon's, that it'll all be all right in the end. If it's not all right, it's not the end. And that's kept me going, especially during the last year with all the lockdown and so on and so forth. And also for my writing. If it doesn't feel right, then I'm going to keep on going and edit and see how it pans out in the end. I'm on my memoir at the moment, but of course that takes in, being a child in North London, which is quite Cypriot, but also to include parts of the Cypriot culture, obviously, into that, because my dad was from Cyprus, and I want to include recipes and so on and so forth how my dad taught my mum to cook avgolemoni, and now she taught all her sisters in Wales to do it. So, and kubebia. There are people in South Wales who are now making food they can't pronounce, because of my dad. So it's all got to come out, it's all got to be recorded. I've got no brothers and sisters, but we do have two wonderful children who are more Cypriot than I'll ever be, I think, because they look it, and I need to hand that down to them.